sorts of contaminants in there. Anyway, the metal roof is the best, and the EPDM membrane roof, which is a rubberized roof, is also very good. However, it's UV sensitive. Conveyance is the next major item, and that's usually the east trough, or your gutter, and your downpipes. Next item is your pre-filter. Before, as the water drops out of the outlet of the east trough, it's filtered before it takes the pipe through the first flush diverter. This is another item I'll talk about a little more in depth. And then enters the tank. Your tank itself, your sensor, your vent, your overflow here with the backflow prevention. You have your outlet here with your pump and your post filter. I'll get into detail a little more as we go on. How to calculate rainfall potential. Let's take the rule of thumb and talk about metric only. First of all, we take our Verico home. And I want to use the Verico home as an example to work these calculations through because we're in it. But essentially, the rule of thumb is 1 square meter of roof catchment times the millimeters of rain is going to give you your liters of water. Completely simple. In fact, metric is set up with water in mind here. So we're talking about the roof footprint. No gain for slope, it's just the footprint. And we're going to add on a little bit for the overhang at the soffit. So that's where you're going to collect your rainwater. Your average annual rainfall in the Saskatchewan area, 246 millimeters per year. Not a whole lot. If you take your Verico home, 126 square meters times 246 millimeters of rain is 3,996 liters of water available per year from this home. Now you're going to lose a little bit on the rainwater here because of evaporation. You're going to lose a little bit in the first flush diverter, and you may spill some, so probably you're not going to get exactly that yield. Now your water requirements, again with the Verico home, unless if I understand it correctly, you're planning 2 people to live in here over the long term. 2 people at 300 liters a day each. It's a little high, but just for sake of working calculations out, let's stick with it. And only for 335 days. Why? I think it's safe to assume that people will be away from their home at least 30 days a year. You're going to go somewhere. Surely you can take a holiday. So for sake of accurate calculations, we're just going with 335 days. With your 600 liters, it's 201,000 liters of water required to run that household for the year. Your water shortfall is 170,000 liters. So you're going to be needing here in Saskatchewan to have a switch over. You're going to have to cross over to another source at some point. Addressing these shortfalls, number 1, use less. Here at the Verico home, we're talking about ultra efficient faucets and washing machines and low flush toilets. Everything you can do to use less. Save more, meaning add catchment. Put a porch up, metal roof, you can get more catchment. Use your garage, use other buildings. Alternate sources, well, you're talking water mains, wells, or aquifers. And of course, grey water recycling. Gutters and downspouts. Now, gutter and gutter protection. This is the backbone of the business that we have developed, is the gutter protection. And what we see here is a usual east trough completely full of crap. And this is the beginning of your contamination cycle. Right away, you've got biomass, you've got possibly mosquitoes and bugs in there. You can get more than this type of protection system, but this one is a sleek system because it deflects all the debris off the edge of the house, and water goes into the gutters due to surface tension. It simply clings. So because our background is in this, and we discovered that the water coming off this system is pretty good, this is what led us into rainwater harvesting. We've got the background in the gutters and the downpipe, the background in the protection system, It's a natural fit to move into rainwater harvesting. There's two types of gutter protection that we recommend, and this is really the first and best pre-filter you can get. The deflector system, which is what you saw on the other page. The water follows the shape of the deflector into the gutter, the debris falls off. The only stuff that we get in there that we have to deal with is dust-like particles. The other one we're most familiar with is the screening, which is the holes or the netting. The screenings are getting finer and finer. It's a lot less expensive with this system, however, it's not nearly as effective and there is some maintenance required. But it will straighten out the worst debris. Pre-filter. So, the water's coming down the downpipe and it falls into, this is one example of a pre-filter. This is a screen top, so the water drops through the downpipe into the screen top, and right away the screen deflects the gross debris. Once the water falls into the body of this housing, there's a first flush diverter built into it. First flush diverters are really designed to remove the first flush of any rainfall from the storage tank, not allow it in there. The theory is the first flush will have most of the contaminants, the existing dust and the things that have accumulated between the raining cycles. So this has got three things in it. It's got the screen for keeping the debris out. It's got a first flush diverter in it, and these are water skimmers. So as the water falls through the pipe, it tends to cling to the outside of the pipe. There's a ring there and a screen, and the water goes through the ring, through the screen, and out of these, either one of these outlets. So one of these is a 1/2 inch, 1.5 inch, one of them is a 1 inch, and you can unscrew the whole thing and have a 3-inch outlet. So it skims the water coming down the pipe into the storage tank. These things this is made out of PVC, and it's great because it mates well with other PVC, and PVC is a great piping for rainwater harvesting. The downside, of course, is that being PVC, it's vulnerable to frost. We can get into higher end filters that are basically pre-filters that are stainless steel. And those are from Germany, so they're a little more expensive. Tanks. Now, one thing about tanks is, what are you going to do? Are you going to do a seasonal irrigation system and decommission in the fall or drain it? Or are you going to do a full-fledged system where you can run multiple outputs, i.e. toilet, washing machines, irrigation, any use that you might have? This is one of the first questions to answer. And then the placement of the tank. Is it going to be above ground or is it going to be buried? Is it going to be inside the building? Here in Saskatchewan, we've got to worry about frost. So burying it is a good idea if you haven't got space on your site. In Europe, in Germany, most of it is buried. Here, and especially with the Verico home, we have an opportunity to put a large tank in the basement before the RTM gets moved on. It's probably the most cost effective. The tank, in this case, would be, I think I'll get into that later. Okay, other considerations. Your actual site. Where are you going to overflow? Any tank that you install needs to have overflow capabilities. Meaning, when it rains like Noah, is it Noah? Yeah, I think so. Biblical rains, at any rate, it's going to overflow. Right? So you've got to be prepared for that. And your overflow has to equal the combined input going into that tank. So an overflow is really important. If you can, go downgrade for your overflow pipe. You can go into a storm sewer or you can go into a drain away. The tank material, I think we'll talk more about that in a minute. The proximity to your catchment area, meaning your roof or wherever you're going to catch your rainwater from. Now you can catch rainwater from a parking lot too, it doesn't have to be a roof. And of course if you're digging, you're going to be needing to know where your other services are that you dial before your dig idea. Okay, the average rainfall in Saskatoon. One of the ways and there's basically two ways of determining the size of tank you need, is talking about your average rainfall throughout the year, talking about the time between rains, which in Saskatchewan is 5 months or so. When I decided how to estimate tank size, I go with major rain events. If it rains in the month of June, 600 milliliters of water, on the Verico home that would mean 7,560 liters. However, the month before you got a whack of rain, and you probably never used it all up. So your tank itself needs to be a little larger than not, basically. Again, we have considerations of the space where it's going to go in. We can use more than one tank side by side in series. But generally speaking, we're talking about tanks in the area of 1,700 liters. Or no, I think it's, I'm going to have to check on exactly the size, because sometimes okay, yeah, 7,000 liters would be enough. A little more on tanks before I get too far ahead. Here's your seasonal rainwater tank, perfectly fine. And here's your more complicated system running components in the house. The type of tanks that we have are bladder, concrete, metal, propylene, polypropylene, and depending on the scenario, each has its place. For the Verico home, a freestanding poly tank in the basement is probably the best idea.